Thank you very much, and thank you for coming to this meeting, which is such a unique occasion to get together people who know about Trofim D, whose name fortunately disappeared largely from the conscience of people. I will do my talk as a free talk, not reading it from papers based on my PowerPoints. So it's a different approach from historians who prepare everything in a different way. I mean, I prepare my talk too. Okay, so the main landmark of Lysenkoism are these major dates: 1920s, Yarovization; 1936, formal confrontation start with classical genetics; 48, the Vasnil meeting; 49, Boschian, a microbiologist with ideas that bacteria and viruses can transform into each other, and both also can take crystalline form. This thing disappeared within 2 years, but was incorporated into the Lysenkoist dogma for a little while. New cell biology of Lepeshinskaya, rediscovered in 1950. Cells can develop from non-cellular living matter. This was also incorporated in the Lysenkoist tenets. From 53, increase in criticism, but party still supports agrobiology. 56, Khrushchev starts supporting Lysenko very much, and in 65, the final demise. I just want to summarize in one slide maturing biology in the mature form. Genes do not exist. DNA is not genetic material. Acquired characters can be inherited. Vegetative hybridization is a way of bringing or making hybrids, a proof of the absence of genes. Lysenko came later with the sudden conversion of species, which Lysenko actually linked to Lepeshinskaya. Cells from non-living material or non-cellular material develop, and there is no intraspecific struggle. Now, Lysenko actually became known in all over Europe already in the 1930s. This is a paper from 1933, Yavorization of wheat. They didn't even know how to spell it. It was based on the British publications, and the writer, who is a well-known plant breeder, says, at present we should not raise our hopes and should test quietly and calmly the method of Lysenko. If we find it in it something that helps our domestic agriculture, the introduction of the method will follow by itself. We should add that similar experiments were performed in Hungary by Legány some years ago. And in 1942, the Hungarian Second Army was at the Don, fighting Russia. Paper in the same agricultural journal, Russian Revolutionary Ideas in Plant Breeding, and from the journal Yarovizatsiya, they even reproduced pictures of Michurinism. In this article, he says, in the past 2 years, I also performed small-scale experiments with vegetative hybridization, and I succeeded in obtaining 2-3 periclinal chimeras, but I need more time to be certain of these results. Knowing the tendency of the Russian soul to exaggerate, the new trend cannot eliminate in a short time the well-established theories of inheritance. We cannot ignore it either in view of Michurin's successes. His practical results do not permit us not to take notice of his teachings of the creative Darwinism in agrobiology. So this is all before the war, or during the war. A plant breeding manual used for many years, in 1944 published, has the iconic images from Russia. Michurin, the outstanding geneticist of today's Russia, his views are rather novel, says he modestly, and Lysenko, the most ardent follower and developer of Michurin's teachings. So in fact, within the agricultural community, Lysenko's ideas were not novel. It was there. And in 1945, after the liberation of Hungary from Germans by the Russian army, agricultural people started doing vegetative hybridization experiments. So by the time we got to the big political upheavals in Hungary in 1948 and 49, the fact that there is a creative Darwinism outside of Hungary was not an unknown idea to Hungarian people. Just to remind you that in 48, when the Vasnyl meeting was in Hungary, fusion of the communist and social democratic parties, that is unifying the two groups, June 48, elections giving full control to the Communist Party, May 49, execution of László Rajk on trumped-up charges, the Minister of Interior, October 49. So it was politically an extremely period with big upheavals, and this is when the Vasnyl meeting happened, when Michurinism appeared. At the same time, the Academy of Sciences, the Hungarian, had equally complicated history. Hungarian Scientific Council was established in contrast to the old academy to have an independent party-organized system. It was established in 48, and full activity started in March, November 49. And the old academy had to be reorganized into a Soviet-style body, Ministry of Science, in effect, in November 49. So there was this very short period of changing a relatively independent scientific body into party-dominated, party-oriented body. This is when the work on the first 5-year state plan of scientific research began. In 49. It was started by the Scientific Council, and then it was finalized by the Academy of Sciences. Of course, 1948, August, in the party journal, we have the first report of the August session. The Michurinist Soviet biology disproves the chromosome theory of reactionary biologists. So this was the first impact when it was clear that the party has a certain opinion and we will have to change things. Michurinization began immediately. I will just give you a few glimpses. There is no time to go into details. It was picked up by the Academy of Sciences. The ministries of Agriculture, Education, Technology immediately started working on that. Individual scientists and opportunists. There was a tremendous and quick impact takeover of the Michurinist tenets. Within a few months, journals were changed, the journals were full with reports on various aspects of it. We got tremendous help, in quotes, from the Soviet Union, the VOX, the Society for Cultural Relationships, sent people very soon to all the people's democracies to teach Michurin biology, and they, in Hungary, they were received by the Hungarian Soviet Friendship Society. Teaching had to be revamped very quickly. I have no time to show, but there are textbooks for high school which are clearly Michurinist textbooks, and classical geneticists who really knew better got into difficulties, victims, and many had to take up the tenets or display the tenets. One victim I will mention, Gyula Fabian on Lake Balaton at the Biological Institute, was a well-known Drosophila geneticist who worked in Switzerland for many years, and a delegation of the Academy and of the Hungarian KGB, the AVH, came, and he had to pull down in the toilet all his sculptures to prove that he is not waiting for the American imperialists to occupy Hungary. Now, the first real contact in person of the Hungarian scientific community with Michurinism was Glushchenko, who came many times to Hungary in February 49, that is few months after the August session. He was in Budapest. In a later visit, his portrait was or bust was made by the main Hungarian party sculptor, Kisfaludy Strobl. Those of you who have in Budapest, there is the monument to the liberation of Budapest, a woman holding a wreath. That was Kisfaludy Strobl's. I couldn't track down where this bust is now, but it's certainly listed in the oeuvre of the thing. He visited in February 1954 our department. I was working at the Department of Histology, and then he was talking on formation of plant cells and visited. So I had personal contact with him. I could talk to him. Not that it is... Of course, he gave a bundle of lectures, and the titles are very typical. Michurin, the Great Transformer of Nature, Struggle of Idealism and Materialism in Biology, Academician Lysenko as a scientist and researcher. Within a few days, he was there, about 2 weeks in Hungary. At that time was the film by Glushchenko, the Michurin film, introduced in Hungary, and it was introduced by Glushchenko to the Hungarian Soviet Cultural Society. So these are actually all events which I witnessed personally. I'm not that young, and the comments on Hungarian biology were made by Glushchenko, reporting to a couple of places. I got his internal report, which is in the archives of the Academy of Sciences in Russia, where he says that the Hungarian biology is no good. This is what he gave to the Hungarians as a report. I did not find any active followers of Weissmannism. The few experimentalists who use the principles of Morganism in their work are dissatisfied with the situation and seek new ways. Neither did I find active followers of the Michurin-Lysenko direction, although some attempts were already made. I found everywhere where I lectured or spoke with scientists a genuine readiness by most scientists to learn the Michurin theory, learn its methods, principles, details of the experiments. This is healthy and good, deserves support and help. And then he gave some absolutely nonsensical comments. We have to translate into Hungarian books, etc., etc., etc. This was the time when the first 5-year plan for scientific research was developed. This is the preamble to it. Main directions of the 5-year plan are to give support for the liquidation of idealistic theories in biology, enable the deep understanding and application and further development of the principles and methods of Michurin biology, ensure that science serves the needs of the 5-year plan of state economy. The basis of this work is the dialectical materialistic method of Marx, Engels, Lenin, and Stalin, and the agrobiological teachings of Williams, Michurin, and Lysenko. It is evident that the idealistic theory of Weissmann, Mendel, and Morgan cannot serve as the basis of biology because it denies the possibility of creating new plant and animal forms. So the camouflage was perfect. This is the introduction to plant genetics of this plan. Michurin biology gives dialectical materialist outlook to genetics. In Hungary, this progressive theory directs already the genetic studies in the theory and practice of plant breeding. This is 1950. And this became state law, of course. I don't read the rest here. In 1951, there was already at the Academy a major meeting, thick volume, results of the application of Michurinist biology in our plant breeding and seed production. Plant breeding and seed production in all major institutions follow Michurinist methods, or more properly, all normal methods are labeled by them as Michurinist. So they didn't change the approach, but everything became immediately Michurinist. Interestingly, the first contributor to this meeting was Géza Havas, who was an agronomer who regularly repeated abrupt species transformations from the year 1911 on, way before Lysenko ever mentioned these things. These are some of the transformations. He was declared, in a paper, Damage of Morganist Genetics to Our Plant Breeding, in 1951. He was declared a victim of classical geneticist. He lost his position as a senior director of experimental plant breeding after a debate in the 30s with Zoltán Szabó, professor of the Polytechnic University, and was transferred to the Museum of Agriculture. So we already had victims of the Morganists in the 1930s. It's a very advanced country, I have to say. It's the same thing, the person summarizes the tasks of improve our work in plant breeding. First, we have to recognize, unmask, and eliminate the errors due to the influence of Morganist genetics. Second, we have to gain a thorough knowledge of the theory and methods of Soviet agrobiology. Textbook available at that time, approved for university use, was Turbin's Genetics and Fundamentals of Breeding, which presents only Michurinist Lysenkoist agrobiology. The Agricultural Sciences Journal is already the journal of the Michurin Society of Agricultural Sciences. But perhaps many of you heard of George Lukács, the philosopher, who was really a very serious Marxist philosopher, but in his major work, published in 1954, The Destruction of Reason, the scientific possibility of explaining the world from its own premises has become greater and greater. In our own day, it is the process of reaching completion with the approach of our knowledge to the concrete transitions between inorganic and organic nature, Darwinism, the further development of Darwinism by Michurin and Lysenko, research into the origin of life by Oparin and Lepeshinskaya. So the whole stellar constellation of Soviet science became, let's say, accepted by one of the main philosophers of Hungary. Now, I will, how much time do I have?
You have 10 minutes.
Okay. I will just mention a few persons who, I can't go through the whole list. Kurt Sedelmeier was an outstanding plant breeder. He developed many new sugar beet sorts. He had his own firm, which was taken over by the government in 1950. He remained its director, got Kossuth Prize, member of the Hungarian Academy of Sciences. In 1956, after the revolution, he went to Austria and established his own firm there. This is what he says in 1955, Michurin biology and Hungarian plant breeding. I assembled the Michurin principles of plant breeding in the following: selection, plant crosses, directed raising, directed constructive selection, and fast and expert expansion of seeds. Classical plant selection methods. In this, I expanded the boundaries of plant breeding beyond its usual ones. But the individual points are so tightly dialectically connected that we cannot neglect any if we wish our breeding work to be really productive. So typical camouflage. My professor, I worked in his department, professor of histology. He was secretary of the biology division of the Hungarian Academy. He actually did tremendous good job as a secretary, helped a lot of people, was very positive. Actually, thanks to his support, I am here. But he was a very positive figure. But in 1952, he got the Kossuth Prize for discovering the cell birth as a process. Here, in the cell, nuclear material concentrates, cell is being formed and the cell is expelled. Birth of cell. In my paper presented at last year's General Assembly of the Academy, I reported on our studies with my co-workers that revealed new aspects of the life of cells. These studies gave full support of Lepeshinskaya on the origins of cells. That's why the Kossuth Prize. By 1964, with his co-workers, he wrote a book, small book, Some Philosophical Problems of Biology and Medical Sciences. The above discussed two examples, origin of cells and genetics, shows that those allegedly fighting against dogmatism created around themselves the strongest scientific dogmatism. Because they were dogmatic, they did not recognize the value of scientific data obtained by others. At the same time, they lacked foundation. So he actually pulled back beautifully, and he did very good biology after. One more person I would like to mention, Sándor Rajki was an agronomer PhD candidate, got a PhD in Moscow in 1955 in Lysenko's institute, but not under Lysenko himself. Immediately returning to Hungary, he became director of the Institute of Agriculture of the Hungarian Academy of Sciences, and he was a firm believer of Lysenko. Sorry. And later he developed his own theory of inheritance. He received the Doctor of Science in Budapest in 1962. It was the most difficult defense of any dissertation because he defended in it transformation of species, Yarovization process, its genetic and metabolic material, but he insisted that a serious geneticist should be one of his opponents. So every point of his thesis was made clear it's not tenable. But yet, finally the Academy approved the PhD. In 1972, he still published, was still active, and developed a complete reversal of the central dogma, protein RNA to DNA. And it was so debatable, this book, that the N.P. Dubinin himself was asked to write a review on this book for a Hungarian journal in the Biologia, and the conclusion was of Dubinin, the stand of Reiki and co-workers seems anachronistic, their views are belligerent, they are oriented against linking recent developments in genetics and the gene theory with practical breeding. And this is a serious matter since authors represent a major research group of the Hungarian Academy of Sciences. So from Budapest went to Russia to classical geneticists to get the critique. Reiki has been invited a few years later to discuss Lysenko with György Acél, Deputy Prime Minister of Hungary. So the government was so involved in this question. And I just show here two questions raised by György Acél. I like to form opinions on the people on the basis of my own personal impressions. What is the situation in Lysenko? May he have been partially right. But then, sorry, going back is, yeah. Do you intend to reply to that rather oddly toned article I read of Dubinin? So the Prime Minister, Deputy Prime Minister read the review, and the party was exploring what happened really. Some people tried to make out that Dubinin article was the official opinion of the Soviet Union. Neither I nor any other responsible leader of the party can possibly agree with its implication. The article simply expresses the opinion on one Moscow scientist, and as such it both can and should be disputed. Now, I will finish my talk with this gentleman, Barna Györfi, 1911 to 1970, who was the director of the Genetic Institute of the Academy of Sciences. He remained a true scientist all the time, never gave up any of the classical tenets. He moved to microbial genetics because they had to give up crop. But what is interesting, he was nominated for corresponding membership in the Hungarian Academy in 1967. Political pressure not permitted his election. His membership became active in 1990, 20 years after his death. So the powers are working in this time still. It is still a completely untouched topic in Hungarian history of science, with the exception of one or two papers. And I started trying to get a little bit deeper in the whole history. One more, Lysenko gave a lecture in 1960 in Budapest at the Academy. I was there. It was the most attended meeting ever at the Academy, as to be understood. Just look at the central paragraph. I promise you that I will do all I can to be able to reply to the many questions transmitted to me by the Academy of Sciences. I spent literally the whole night getting ready for this talk, and I'm still shaking, I'm still scared. This is about his first confrontation abroad with an audience who was not his, or who could express his own feelings. Well, I could go on long. I just would like to show you one more slide. This is the commentary on the event by one of the participants. The impact became exactly the opposite of the expected. The audience listened uncomfortably, moving to the well-known phraseology. Approximately 200 questions were submitted, which were combined into a few. When he could not give any meaningful answers, his failure became obvious. The irony of the fate was that Lysenko himself disillusioned the Hungarian professionals, among them many of his own followers in Lysenkoism. 1960. The failure of the Budapest talk contributed to his loss of power in the USSR. This is a Hungarian article. I'm not sure whether this is documented. Thank you very much for your attention.